Oh my God! Now I have to edit that. Okay, so. Oh my God! Okay, I should have had my notepad fired up. Let's see. First, Mr. D space. Mr. D space.
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 It's the digital No, wait. It's what's
content
it called?
minded.
Content minded.
First, at start. Anyways.
Oh,
it's been a crazy night, man. Like I've just. How have you been? How have you been, by the way? How have you been?
I'm sorry. I'm spilling drink all over myself. Hang on, let me.
Oh God.
There we go.
There we go.
I shan't. I shall be very cautious about my intake of alcohol.
Oh yeah, that's
hold
good.
On yeah. No, it's certainly a good idea because I don't almost ever when I'm on a recorded stream, I don't ever drink because it's not a good idea.
Yeah, you save that for the cocktail hours.
For the cocktail hour,
spaces.
I can't even imagine how many curse things I've said during those spaces. I mean,
I've witnessed a lot of them. Yeah.
Oh, the worst. And of course, as the evening goes on, it it gets even worse, and everyone else gets worse as well, especially Semigog.
Oh man.
And I think I've turned him into an alcoholic. Though. I really think I have because he
a weekend warrior.
Well, yeah, he claims that he didn't used to drink, and now he drinks all the time. And he's got a GF. So
apparently, I don't have a GF, according to some Cole poster. That when I take my meds, she goes away. So because.
Well, so the lore is that you remain. What do they call a true cell? You remain a true cell.
Yeah. No, that because everyone was doing the wife posting thing with the redheaded woman.
I hate it. I hate that so much. I don't see a lot of drama. I mean, I only saw that because
like half of Twitter. That's why.
Oh, I block everyone. I mean, anyone that annoys me in any way. I mean, I block all women. Well, almost all women. There's a few women that I that I actually.
There's so many words I have to censor for YouTube. This is going to take a lot of work.
Oh, okay. I'm going to be very careful. No, I'll be because I forget. I forget about YouTube being, I mean, so censorious. You are very cautious. I mean, I have noticed on the digital archipelago that you especially, but also Prude are very cautious.
Prude he slipped up today with something, a Z word that I have to edit out. I have to edit out. Yeah.
I didn't listen to today's show yet, so.
Well, it was all right. We talked about the therapeutic state and millennials. Like everything has to, like the teacher becomes a therapist, and we read some Thomas Saws. But anyways, Mr. D.
Thomas Saws. Hello.
Thomas Saws. This has been a long time coming, and I think that it won't be the first time. It won't be the last time. You grace Content Minded with your presence.
Don't be so sure.
Well, I think there's a lot to talk about, but I just for the first meeting, I wanted to for the first recording, I just wanted to riff. But if you could, I know you did the whole. I remember Jay Burden asked you about your background and how you ventured into these spaces, because you are sort of like a mercurial figure in terms of not having a ready available content platform apart from your Twitter to shill. But I mean, besides the streams that you do with people, but who are you without? Well, I know you're very conscious about your own personal information because of your business that you're in, very dirty, despicable world, art world, but very sordid business of the art world. But who are you? How'd you get here? Tell us your favorite color. All that. Tell the class who you are.
Well, my name is Tony. I'm from Southern California. I like daiquiris, and I'm a Pisces. No, so yeah. I mean, people will know some of this material. So yes, I am a true anon. I'm not as anon as some people, because I do share a lot of things, especially on my world famous late night Twitter spaces. But I mean, most broadly, I am a middle-aged man who grew up. I mean, I was certainly the definition of a rootless cosmopolitan in a way, even though I've sort of shed that life. But I grew up to I would say aspirational minor aristocratic parents, who again always, one sort of feature of all the branches of my family is that for hundreds of years they've basically been on the kind of periphery and never really made it. It's like being, it's like being a, it's like being a
cousin to the Rothschilds.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. The third cousin once removed to the Rothschilds, where you only get one baby sacrifice every 5 years.
Yeah, Jacob would send you like one Christmas card, and that was it. Rest in power, Jacob Rothschild.
Yeah, little something.
I remember Stout tweeted that, rest in power, Jacob Rothschild. I found that so hilarious.
Lol.
People were tweeting rest in power O.J. Simpson today. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, I saw some good O.J. Simpson memeing though, because I saw someone posted.
I posted the New Jack clip from Smoky Mountain where he's like, "Shout out to my boy O.J."
Yeah, someone posted George Floyd's picture, with just like O.J. Simpson with his dates on it. Someone else posted, there's an old meme which features an American sport commentator called Howard Cosell, who was cancelled in the 70s, like proto-canceling, because he was doing commentary on an American football match, and that I can't remember who the player was, but it was a black gentleman. And he was doing a spectacular run. I don't know anything about American football. I'm a rugby person, but and he was doing like a really good run. And Howard Cosell said, "Look at that little monkey go!"
That was like how they got Don Imus. Remember the?
Yeah, he didn't mean anything. He didn't mean anything by it, obviously. But but he was sort of semi-cancelled. Yeah, Don Imus, I remember him. But anyway, there's an
nappy-headed hoe. Remember that was
nappy-headed hoe. That was. I mean, that's a bit more deliberate than just using.
Oh yeah, it was Don Imus. It was 100% deliberate. Yeah. Wow, man, that's crazy.
But anyway, the meme is a picture of Howard Cosell, who was again a sport commentator and interviewer, and flanking him on either side. On one side is O.J. Simpson. On the other side is Bruce Jenner. And the caption, and it's a real picture from the late 70s, and the caption says, "I've just seen the future, and you won't believe this shit." So,
that's incredible.
I like that. It's a good old meme.
That's like people posted the Trump and OJ picture together. That was like, yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, now I remember. Now, so of course, I am so old that I remember very clearly that British News covering the Bronco, the famous Simpson Bronco.
Yeah, the chase.
Chase. I remember that. And then I remember when I first moved to America, because I lived in America for quite a while in the 90s and early 2000s.
Oh yeah.
And I'd been there many times. Because of my parents, because of my father's occupation. I often find myself dragged to the Washington area, let's just say. But I remember.
Well, now you live in America, right? You live in America now.
Well, I have moved back to an unidentified tropical island, which may be in the tropics. It may be in New England. I can't say for sure. But yeah, I mean, I've moved back for various reasons. But but I remember when I first moved to, I lived in various places. I first moved to New York City, and then because of educational concerns, I moved elsewhere. And then I moved back to New York. But when I first moved there, I was there. I remember I was at the Museum of Natural History, and this would have been 1995. And
wow.
the verdict apparently had just been announced, and an entire mob. Now, this is again before the smartphone, so I don't know how news didn't travel quite as fast as it does today. But
Yeah.
but somehow within minutes of this verdict, every every person in New York of a certain ethnicity had a little joyous chimp out. And I remember there was like a school group, and of course in New York City, most school groups are a very homogeneous ethnicity, and it ain't white. And I just remember this group of youths just going mental, going absolutely mental, and just whooping and running around and being chased by security. I mean, back when museums would actually eject people for
when you didn't have Extinction Rebellion protesters going
up. I mean, when you didn't allow people to actually damage, priceless exhibits. But yeah, and I was just, what the hell is going on? Because I was with a friend of mine who was visiting from the UK, and it took us forever to figure it out. And I was just like, oh no, they let him off. They let him off.
If it does not fit, you must acquit. I said this on stream today. I said, what if the picture of hell, like that part in The Simpsons, Hell's Lab's ironic punishment division? Like, imagine like O.J. Simpson goes to hell, and his hell is like he has to relive the Johnny Cochran trial, but instead the glove actually fits the stuff.
It actually fits. That was, oh my god, that was so stupid. Then that trial went on forever. I remember.
Yeah.
And I remember, it's weird because I remember some of the characters. Like, I remember the judge was like this Japanese American gentleman, and I think he was called Ito. Lance Ito was his name, yes. And I remember Marsha Clark, who was one of the prosecutors, I believe. And I remember F. Lee Bailey, who was, I mean, Simpson had this whole team of like, like seasoned scumbag lawyers.
Yeah, wasn't Jenner one of his lawyers?
No, it was not. It was Peter Kardashian, the father who's been dead for a long time.
Oh yeah, not Caitlyn Jenner, but
no. He was a runner, I think. It was the patriarch of the Kardashian spawn was one of the attorneys. I mean, he was a famous. I mean, that's how he got rich, as being a filthy LA lawyer.
Ambulance chaser. Yeah.
And Johnny Cochran, famous, and of course Johnny Cochran, whom famously inspired a character on Seinfeld, whose name escapes me, but there was a black.
When Kramer and Newman were trying to sue. I forget the exact episode.
It was for smoking. I think they were trying to sue a tobacco company.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Oh well, he was in I mean, basically after that, every time they needed like an episode with a lawyer, like he would be in it. But I can't remember. But I remember seeing an interview with that actor, and he'd actually met when he was young through his parents. He had actually met Johnny Cochran. So it was weird. It was like weird, sort of weird alignment of the stars that he
There's tons of those.
Jackie Childs was his name.
Jackie Childs, yeah.
Jackie Childs.
What was the phrase he goes? Oh man, it was like his malapromptisms. Yeah, it was funny. But yeah, so you kind of have lived a very bohemian life. I was 3 years old in 1995. So
lol.
Yeah.
Oh no. I'm used to it because of course almost everyone in these spaces is a much younger man. I mean, you're relatively mature for
the crowd of frogs.
You know.
Yeah, I'm an old hat.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
indeed. I mean, you know, I am around a decade older than Academic Agent. When I first
Whoa!
when I first heard of Academic Agent, I thought he was like a 60-year-old man. Like I thought he was white as well. But no, surprisingly enough. So the only person I am younger than Radlib, Stephen Carson, and I am younger than Semiagog. but that's about it.
Mm. Oh my god.
So I've been around for ages. So yes, I was a rootless cosmopolitan. I mean, via my parents, I had a very mixed up. I mean, as so many people, you know, and you know, I was part of a waning, you know, the sort of waning. I mean, I went to boarding school at the tail end of like the trad, you know, the traditional British boarding school model.
Oh yeah.
With all the concomitant savagery and sodomy that entails. And you know, and then of course I went off the rails, so to speak, for about a year. And then I sorted myself out again. Well, as much as I could sort myself out. And you know, and then I went to university and all these things, and so on and so on. All the boring things. Now, of course, I made many missteps along the way, and I had many sort of diversions. I went on various different career tracks, but I always wanted to. Art was always kind of first thing on my mind. I was always extraordinarily interested in creative endeavors, and in art. I was exposed to art. I mean, I had, you know, a grandmother who collected art on a, you know, on a fairly serious level. So I got to see things, you know, certainly, and exposure to, you know, to a kind of rich world, in one sense, in terms of
Well,
kind of richness of artistic, you know, people who were really artistically inclined.
I know that you said once on a space that your family wanted you to go into some kind of white collar profession. What was it, the medical field or something?
Yes, I mean, there
Yeah.
was always, there was always an idea that I would somehow become a become a landowner, and then
Oh,
of
okay.
course,
Yeah. Yeah.
failing that, of course, that I would become a physician. There was a kind of, and I did, as part of my studies, I did do significant studies in a scientific endeavor. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, I've always admired. I'm not going to do that. I don't love science, but you know, I've always admired what used to be called natural philosophy.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, that was the root of like physis. Of physics was connotated as natural philosophy, as
yes,
sort of the earth. Yeah. Yeah.
indeed, and of, you know, of what became chemistry and
Yeah.
physiology and all these other things, but for all kind of, it was much less specialized back in the
Yeah.
day, and that's the
Yeah.
sort of period of that's the sort of period that I admire. But I don't have the maths to actually, certainly didn't have the maths to do physics. So, you know, I sort of pursued other things. But I mean, it was very clear that even though again, you know, you know, I received an academic degree, but it was not anything that I was ever going to do, because you know, I'm also, I mean, I'm an eccentric,
Hmm.
you know, which is a euphemism for
I couldn't tell.
it's a mentally ill person. Yes.
No.
Well, in Britain, when you call someone eccentric, no, in Britain, it's true. When you call someone
I thought
eccentric,
you were totally stable, Mr. D.
um, no, it means a mentally ill person
Right.
with money, So,
Yeah, well,
and
there's a long tradition in Britain of that. Yeah.
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 Well, and of course, the hilarious thing is, it's not even, you know, because the money part, you know, is always is always a bit threadbare in my case. But you know, there is a certain kind of class where you're allowed to be just mental, and you can sort of get away with it, you know. I don't not anymore, because I mean I hate to spoil it for everybody, but the whole kind of natural aristocratic upper class of Britain is almost gone. I mean,
it's yeah.
They're just disgusting nouveau riche strivers at this point, and just the worst people in the world.
And they were systematically gutted from various forces, both economic and cultural. Yep. Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah. I mean, if you look certainly into the history of 20th century in Britain, there was almost a concerted effort to wreck to wreck the aristocracy, you know, and it worked, and it worked very well, you know.
Well, even like the political apparatus, you really can't have a lot of like zones of aristocratic excess. I remember, I think it was BAP that was doing these multiple episodes on Renaissance Italy and talking about the Medicis and different aristocrats that did, some of them did absolutely horrible things, but you know, like rolling boulders on hills and crushing peasants and
wonderfully wretched things,
wonderfully excessive, debaucherous things that would make Desaad blush. But I think that nowadays there's this sort of weird proletarianization of degeneracy. And even the aristocracy, like everyone has an iPhone, for instance, like the aesthetic signifiers of the upper class is no more in a weird way. And like true aristocratic excess cannot exist in this world. Would you agree with me, Mr. D?
Yeah. No, I certainly think you're right about that. Hang on. Let's see. There's a quote that I always think of in this context. I've got extensive files. Let's see. Here we go. So this is now. Do you remember when Donald Trump? That one of the most remarkable photographs of the modern political era was when Donald Trump posed in the White House in front of a portrait of Lincoln,
and
a banquet table full of like McRibs and and Wendy and Burger and Burger King big.
Which football team won the Super Bowl that he gave that spread to? I forget. Was it the Kansas City Chiefs or was it?
I don't know. I don't know anything about American sports.
It was it was a Super Bowl team that.
Yeah, it was a sport thing. I mean, again, if people want to look it up, he is standing there with both of his hands. You know, he's doing like jazz hands, and he's got on like that absurdly long tie, and he's just smart. He is so proud. He's so proud. And the best part is he's standing in the White House in this kind of sort of federal style room with a big portrait of Abraham Lincoln, who sat there like Rodin's The Thinker with his fist on his chin.
Yeah.
And there are these absurd partial gilt candelabra, sitting on this table, and the burgers are all sitting on like silver trays, but they're all still in the wrapper, and it's so good. And so when that photograph appeared, I paired it with an Andy Warhol quote, which I always think about in relation to this, and certainly back to this idea of this leveling of the world, where everyone becomes a sort of commercial or materialist equal, because anyway, here's the quote and this is from a book called The Philosophy of Andy Warhol, From A to B and Back Again, which I would certainly recommend people read. What's great about this country is that America started the tradition where the richest consumers buy essentially the same things as the poorest. You could be watching TV and see Coca-Cola, and you know that the president drinks Coke, Liz Taylor drinks Coke, and just think you can drink Coke too. A Coke is a Coke, and no amount of money can get you a better Coke than the one the bum on the corner is drinking. All the Cokes are the same, and all the Cokes are good. Liz Taylor knows it, the president knows it, the bum knows it, and you know it.
Trump definitely knows it. Yeah.
Is that not a perfect quote for him?
It's perfect because I think that the way that he meant it was different than a lot of cultural critics that were saying, like, he's commenting on the beauty of Americana as this, like, in a way, capitalism brings this equality to people. But I think he meant it more of like in almost a strange, like, proto-neo-reaction sardonic way of like America is a communist country, that actually the bum on the street is no different than the president, and actually
and the most beautiful woman in Hollywood at the time.
Yes, at the time, Elizabeth Taylor,
it's like this great level. Well, so I did an absurd series of streams a couple of years ago on Academic Agent's channel about Warhol. Andy Warhol, and my kind of overriding thesis, if I had one, they were very disorganized streams, but was that Andy Warhol was a crypto reactionary. And it is writ large all through his work and through his life. And I talk about Andy Warhol a lot. I mean, it's just I think certainly a very one of the most influential 20th century artists, and always someone I had a weird fascination with. Because I first really heard about him because I remember when he died in 1987, and I remember getting a hold of a lot of magazines and newspapers and things, and reading all about this. So anyway, but I do think there is a lot of people, of course, anytime you talk about art, especially like quote modern, quote contemporary, art in right-wing spaces, you're going to get a lot of shit because most people are stupid. Incredible. I mean, most people's sophistication, ends with like a kind of 19th century academic painting of a woman with a flower garland in her hair. I mean, that's what people think is trad, which isn't trad. And the hilarious part is that I will post like Titian, I will post Giotto, I will post things like that. All the so-called trads, they don't give like what they want is the simulation of trad, which comes in the 19th century, which is really weird, I think.
Yeah, because I think that the 19th century was itself a simulation of Hellenism and various other influences, and I think they're intuiting that spiritual coal, in a weird way.
Well, remember that. I mean, think of the 19th century opening up. I mean, the great architectural Renaissance in the beginning of the 19th century was pretending to be ancient Egyptians. There was like this weird like Egyptian revival, which of course was entire. I mean, there's something actually about some of those revivals where there is absolutely no attempt at kind of historicism or kind of understanding of the aesthetics or the all the kind of philosophies behind it. Like, it's just purely put a sphinx in it and call it Egyptian. I mean, in a way, I sort of admire that because again, I sort of think that the 19th century was a weirdly kind of proto postmodern. I mean, it was the beginning of this idea of divorcing everything from its referent. And it is hilarious that, of course, that it is this simulation of Palladianism or Georgian architecture, or Gothic revival, and all of these weird.
Well, even Western mystery schools that were based off mostly of Kabbalah, and how like it was like a proto New Age movement that itself was sort of tearing away at the fabric of certain realities, and there was all these weirdo rituals and mystics and charlatans. And
and you get Madame Blavatsky, and you
get Crowley,
Crowley, and all that, all of that. So
it was like a proto New Age, like a New Age postmodernism, before postmodernism was really a thing. That is a correct observation. It's like all the freaks came out in the 19th century, but then I think like a lot of the people in the E-right, they do have a worship of freaks as well, but in a sort of a different way. Like I think a lot of the one good thing about the E-right is that there is a love and appreciation of eccentrics, but I think that when it comes, I mean, whether it's memes or whether it's people that are genuinely on the edge of humanity, there's always like a weird form of online celebrity to people who have engaged in a lot of like, I guess for lack of a better term, schizoculture that can transgress a lot of different boundaries of reality. But unfortunately, that comes at a cost for a variety of reasons. But
an eternal problem, because I've often commented on, I mean, it's difficult because in a way, a lot of people who find themselves on the E-right, they don't understand how thoroughly they have sort of that their entire framework is built off of basically various forms of postmodernism
Yeah.
of the middle to the late 20th century. Like the it's funny, again, even talk about being trad, because it's not, it's not it's a weird simulation. And I just think a lot of young, especially young people, they never knew anything else. They've
Oh,
only lived
100%.
in the society of the spectacle. So it is a bit odd to hear this strange mixture of like return to kind of agrarian, agrarian sort of quasi theocracy, mixed with this just absurd schizo understanding of the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, and
with conspiracies and schizos and people on the edge and internet dynamics. Yeah.
And internet dynamics is very sophisticated, kind of visual and sort of referential play, with memetics and all of these things. And I mean, and then I hate to say, one of the reasons why I feel so comfortable in these spaces is because of course I'm a freak, I mean,
yeah, we all are.
I mean, we all, you're not gonna slither around in these spaces for very long if you're a normal person. So
yeah, 100%.
and it's fine. I mean, because of course you're not gonna. I mean, this is the constitution of an aristocracy in a weird way, or of a kind of elite. I mean, because you necessarily to be a true elite or to be a true aristocrat, you must be you must be intrinsically linked to, but also apart from, a kind of general sense of the culture that you wish to rule over.
Yeah.
And of course now we have this horrible, because now the people we call elites, I mean, these are people who have absolutely no connection, no love, no part in the kind of cultures that they rule over. In fact,
they're incredibly vulgar in their taste.
Yeah, they rule over people they hate, and they're the worst people in the world. So anyway.
No, but that's true though, is that there is no sort of sense of duty or obligation or even love of the various peoples that they rule over. In fact, they wish to destroy. But in the one sense, though, I think because I wanted to ask you about a question about your childhood, actually, but then we'll get to Andy Warhol. But I think that an observation I've had for a long time is that unfortunately there is a sense of aggrandizement over like a lot of right-wing ideas in this, or rather meme complexes, I think unfortunately can serve as a weird sort of ghost dance, or sort of how shall I put it, like a form of aggrandizement, but also like a ghost dance, or a way of sort of externalizing a lack of power by having very intricate and complicated not theories about things, but a very niche sort of aesthetic understanding of reality that can venture off into different tunnels and can form a sort of a dynamic where, in the absence of actual power, maybe with some cultural power, there is a sense that, well, we're kind of doing these things and we sort of have to have a complex about it. And we have to like sort of post, and then you get into these different dynamics and these different memes, and people buy into them as an identity. And I think the problem is that they can lead to a conglomeration of very eccentric people, can of course have the excess of a very disagreeable curmudgeon and very destructive people in some ways. Not all of them, but I think that the dynamics in lieu of actual authority or leadership, there's a lot of negative dynamics to that. And I think we have to be aware of them.
Yes. Yeah. And also, of course, I mean, when you're a community of outliers, there's all, with generally no gatekeeping whatsoever. And again, people who, despite what they say, retain kind of neoliberal idea of egalitarianism, that anyone can sort of enter these spaces and find a way to be accepted. But the problem is, of course, you get people who
Yeah.
are just sociopaths. I mean, you get people who are drawn to chaos and destruction and deconstruction. Like that is what they're here for. They're not here for any ideological reason. They're here because this is the group that they identify as probably the most fruitful to latch on to be a sociopath. So
Yeah.
you certainly get a lot of those types as well, and you've got to watch out for them.
Yeah, they're very destructive people, and there's grifters, and
yeah,
there are even people that pretend to be different ethnicities and different actualities than they actually are, and it's like really
and then you get the absolutely cursed like rad femmes, and and you get people who are trying to sell like liver enzymes and raw eggs. And
basically like a halfway house for the politically homeless in a lot.
And it is odd because so many of the tropes that are now associated with E-right are things that I remember were firmly on the left side of the spectrum. For instance, the complete inversion of, well, I'll use the term that people use, I don't agree with, denialism, or skepticism. That used to be, in my memory, I mean, not entirely the province of the left, but it was certainly associated, I would say, very strongly with the left. And that has completely been inverted. The obsession with natural foods and toxins and all of the shite that you see every day on the I'm going keto. No, I'm gonna go one step. I'm gonna only eat raw eggs and raw milk. No, I'm only gonna eat non-organic. I'm gonna eat inorganic things. I'm gonna grind up minerals because that's all I'm gonna eat. Because of course, if you eat, I'm not gonna eat seed oils. Well, dudes, every oil is a seed oil. Olive oil is a seed oil. You can't eat olive oil. You get all this fucking nonsense about, again, naturopaths and dietary obsessions, and this used to be, again, the kind of hippie left, coded towards the hippie left, and now of course it's become an odd right wing obsession. But it is strange. It is strange, these inversions of the periphery, But in a way, of course, the kind of what passed for the kind of acceptable left, was, which I think has been kind of neoliberalism for a long time. I mean, it always wanted to jettison these things, it just waited for a kind of a moment to do it. And
well, in the 90s and 2000s, like rather, I should say, like mid 90s, early 2000s, they like really expelled the New Age movement and New Age woo, and they became fedora tippers, and like the online atheists and Jon Stewart allowed them to do that, in a weird way.
In a way, for a while, but it is odd because well, those people are. I mean, those people always. I mean, I think also younger people have a very distorted idea of the 1960s, and I talked about this on my space a bit the other day about the people misuse these generational cadre, like boomer. I think a lot of young people have no idea what that really means or what that was like. My parents were actually older than boomers. They were like they were the tail end of the previous generation. But of course, I grew up, in an era where I was sort of immersed in the kind of after effects of true kind of that boomer generation. I don't really subscribe to generational theory, by the way, but I'm just using it as shorthand. But I think a lot of people get the 1960s entirely wrong. I mean, they grossly overestimate the influence of hippie, like the sort of hippie archetype in general culture. People conflate this idea that all boomers were flower children. Well, no, it was a vanishingly small number of people. Now, of course, the aesthetics became commercialized and then was sort of distributed as a style in the late 60s, early 70s, and all that. But it is odd how a lot of these fringe movements that people, again, would sort of cast off as relics of boomerism or relics of the left. I mean, they're a kind of periphery that sort of any sort of acceptable politics dislikes and wants to be rid of. It just so happened that they became associated with the left because the left had to pretend to be slightly tolerant of them until a certain point. And and now, of course, I think a lot of that energy has drifted over to the right. It's very interesting, and I find this. I mean, for me, I am a ridiculous character. I mean, if you saw me in real life, the way I dress, I mean, I've got paisley suits, and I've got fluorescent. I got fluorescent neckties, and I wear.
You have like purple, the Don Cherry suits, yeah.
Yeah, purple leather gloves, and and I wear sandals and beads. I've formed a great admiration of that fellow called Christopher Sandbach, because I'm fascinated by the kind of reactionary hippie archetype, because that's always been my kind of inclination.
Oh yeah, me too.
I unashamedly wear patchouli, oil, and other things. Don't get me started about perfume. That's another weird aspect of my fascinations. But so anyway, yeah, it is odd how the right has become the kind of new home of the freak of the freak.
Yeah, but it's funny though how when you think of in terms of demographics or in terms of populations that inhabit certain idea spaces, like to operate like the sort of state or the regime, whatever you want to call it, has to contain them as a form of like social antigen that must be expelled or must be like taken to the peripheries and subjected to like a weird form of surveillance and containment. And I think like the E-right, unfortunately, is sort of like a containment space for a lot of that energy. Yeah. And like you said, like there is a lot of people that like the right-wing hippie, like I don't know, people were memeing that rapper woman. I know you probably don't have a stellar opinion of
rapper woman.
The hippie girl with the dreadlocks.
No.
She like raps about taking ayahuasca.
No.
Okay.
I pay no attention to rap nor women.
Yeah, I mean,
no, I don't know.
People were like doing like wood posting over. I'm like, oh my god. Like, she has these tattoos and she's got this like hippieism, and it's very much like I remember like us millennials in like the 2000s, like around 2012, everyone was like listening to Terrence McKenna and taking drugs and voting for Ron Paul. And it's like, see, that's like a great, man, I can't believe it, man. Like the universe, man. And I think,
dude, did you hear this? Did you listen to this Alan Watts video?
Yeah. And there's like sort of an iterative revival of the New Age movement every like decade or so, or every few decades. There has to be like a revival of the New Age. But like in the millennial sense, it became like vulgarized self-therapy so quickly that the metaphysics of it were sort of lost.
Yeah.
But but anyways, I wanted to backtrack to you said that your grandmother was an art collector. When you were a kid, was there any particular piece in her collection that really like stood out to you, or?
Well, so yes. So gotta be careful.
Well, because people could track the prominent. Yeah.
I mean, she again, we're not talking about, she didn't own, $80 million Picassos or anything like that, but she did have some significant pieces. So she had about 4 drawings by Henri Matisse.
Whoa!
Which I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with. I mean, Matisse, of course, his body of work is enormous and it's very diverse.
Yeah.
But he did. There's a kind of a type of drawing that he did at various periods of his career. I've got to look for the date because I never ever remember dates. I've got the dates of the particular work. Unfortunately, I had a wonderful connection to these things, but unfortunately, I inherited nothing. So.
Oh my god! So I can't believe it.
I didn't get any of these. Unfortunately, I mean, I have my own art collection, which we could talk about at some point. But no Matisse. So, So if people are kind of curious about this, these were drawings from I mean there were drawings from around the late 1930s, the early 1940s. I mean, there were very simple linear drawings in either charcoal or graphite, graphite pencil, and often of kind of either sort of a combination of still life and a feminine subject,
Oh yeah, there were composite drawings more or less.
Yeah, and again, very loose, very simple linear drawings, but they were absolutely beautiful, and I was absolutely obsessed with them. Loved them. I mean, see, a lot of the kind of the artists I was influenced by. I mean, so from a very early age, I also loved medieval illumination, altarpieces, illuminated books of hours, things like that. And I also had a great admiration for kind of early Renaissance aesthetics. I mean, one of the books which I was read when I was very young was a book by Edmund Spenser called The Fairy Queen, which is a British Renaissance kind of epic poem, with all the I mean, it's of a line, certainly with later kind of fantasy, like Tolkien. I mean, there's a very clear relationship there between the Fairy Queen. In fact, some of the archetypes within Spenser's The Fairy Queen were things that concerned Tolkien. So this was an aesthetic that I was, particularly fond of. And my father didn't collect art, but he collected books, and he had some extraordinary books. So I was also very fond of kind of wood engravings and wood cuts that were printed in kind of earlier books, and and engraving and etching and those sorts of things. So so those were the things that sort of fascinated me, and then
like the Domazal brothers, for instance.
Yeah, indeed, and some earlier thing. Another figure that I love from an early age and who I'm still completely obsessed with is William Blake. As both an artist and a kind of visionary mystic, and a poet and a writer, an absolute outsider.
Sorry, the Dolls. How do I pronounce the name? The Dalziel brothers that did a lot of like Hans Christian Andersen. And did a lot of early wood engravers. They had a whole company, a whole production house of wood engravers. Because at one point that wood engraving was actually quite more reliable than even plate engraving at the time when it came to specifically story printmakers and children and fantasy. So you could get way more prints off of it than even a lot of plate engravings, because this was before they steel plated them as well.
Before they face hardened.
And they were quite prolific. They did, I believe, the first illustrative iterations of Alice in Wonderland as well, if I recall, like something like that. There was like a lot of grim fairy tale stuff in England at the time. They had a huge warehouse with a lot of people that were wood engravers and printmakers. And William Blake really revolutionizing printmaking as well with his very unique method with stopping ink and so forth. And in the first like true, like I think grand work of philosophy and art. That's fascinating. So you were exposed to these Matisse drawings, and I think Matisse did because like all of them, they dabbled in printmaking. I think he did some lithography along with Picasso. Did some lithography as well.
Quite a lot. Another favorite artist, of course, from very very early age for me was Pablo Picasso, who was of course an extraordinarily prolific printmaker. So and who did everything. I mean, he did of course etchings and engravings, woodcuts, liner cuts, lithographs, aquatints, whatever you like.
Well, that's how I learned, because I was studying Edvard Munch's woodcuts and
wonderful, absolutely wonderful those.
and Gauguin, particularly his work in Tahiti, which were like very primitive woodcuts.
Yeah,
he was doing with local source from local wood. Yeah,
another favorite artist. Yes, I have done a lot of printmaking. Unfortunately, I I have never had the patience to do to do woodcuts or wood engravings, or like even sort of certainly metal engraving. I just don't have the patience. And but I own an etching press, and I own a lithography press, and I've done a lot of it. I especially have always loved lithography because it's so versatile and flexible. So so yeah, these are things, and I've done a lot of
you have the
silk
stone
screen
and
as well.
everything. You have like the
Yes,
stones.
I've got
Oh
quite
my
a number
god!
of I mean, I must admit that depending on what I'm doing, I will often use zinc plates because
Oh yeah.
the stone. I mean, even though I prefer the stone, and by the way, the stone. I mean, it's a dying it's a dying aspect of the art. I mean, you know, if you can if you can find a beautiful large stone, I mean, scoop it up because they're not really mining them anymore. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's generally always old stones. Now, fortunately, for a very long time, commercial printers used lithography extensively, and especially before the advent of the kind of zinc plates. You know, they were using stones to publish commercial lithographs, so you could there were an enormous amount of them. I bought a few stones from a person who had um, he found out that a printing company had when it went tits up in the 1950s or 1960s, they took tons of their stones and they dumped them in a quarry lake. Um,
Whoa!
and so he speculated. I mean, this is back in the 90s. Speculatively, uh, like basically dredge this area and drop all these stones, and then of course they needed minor rehabilitation and sold them for great premium because again
Wow.
it's difficult to get them. But yeah, I mean, I love to work on the stone, but of course it is, you know, even then it's an involved process,
It's labor intensive. It's hard on your
labor intensive,
hands.
and
Yeah.
it's hard on your hands. It's murder on your back. I mean, I've got a stone that I can't even move without assistance. So so
Man.
it's nice.
Well,
But yeah,
the fluidity of the medium was why it was so prized before plate engraving. It was,
yeah,
yeah, the
because
different
you
tones.
well, because it's also very much. I mean, because if you're a person who likes to draw, I mean,
Yes.
I've
Yeah.
always liked a rough, broad line. So I like to do things with charcoal. I did a lot of like crayon drawings on paper, but also, I mean, again, you can draw. I mean, there are these crayons that have a specific kind of mixture of wax and grease in them that are used for, you know, they're called litho crayons,
Yeah.
and they're really versatile. I mean, you can get wonderful kind of broadly drawn lines. You can dilute them with water, and you can make washes. There's something called tush, which is this like kind of oily liquid, which you can use again to produce kind of watercolor effects. So I always liked lithography because it was quite versatile, and you can do photo lithography as well. You can
Oh yeah.
incorporate, you can incorporate kind of,
That's an incredibly involved process that takes a long
yeah,
time to
yeah,
perfect. Yeah. Um,
yeah,
there's also I mean I sometimes experiment with certain effects with carborundum paste, but of course
mm,
that's not the same thing. But in terms of like plate
yeah,
printing,
yep.
um, it like I do quite enjoy wood engraving and plate
Well,
engraving, but it is yeah.
you do a lot of sort of
Oh
wood
yeah.
prints, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm getting more into plate, but the thing is it does take a lot of time. It is kind of it just you're staring at a jeweler's loop because I have like a table one. I should probably buy the glasses, but you're staring through a jeweler's loop for multiple hours, and it
yeah,
does you get lost in a sense, and
yep.
it is very involved. But that's crazy, because I think the problem with lithography is that because it's not like, for example, woodcut or other forms of printmaking, like especially lino cut, like every art ho does some lino cut. That I think the barrier to entry is so great because you have to have a huge press, you have to have a stone.
Yeah. I mean, my litho press is quite small. I mean, when I have done like editions, like, you know, commercial editions, for, you know, for my own work, I will do them. I will work with someone who will print them, because that is a whole other process, and there are a lot of technical things that, of course, a master printer, which I'm not a master printer, you know, and again, if people have favorite artists, you know, you look at certainly like, well, like someone like Jasper Johns, you know, who has an extraordinarily broad graphic output, but he's always going to work with these men called master printers, you know, who are people who know every technical in and out. They know how to produce these things, and they can of course produce an absolutely homogeneous edition, you know, that is suitable for commercial purposes. I mean, when you do your own printing, my litho press is quite small. My etching press is very small.
Same with mine,
So I only do little things myself. I certainly never do a kind of big edition, because
I have a homemade nipping press that my old man welded.
That's cool. Oh, that's good.
But
and see, I bought these presses in America, and of course I couldn't, like, I've stored them in America ever since. I couldn't bring them home because they are fucking heavy. They're enormously heavy, especially the litho press. I also bought a 1960s. So it's called a Vandercook proof press, and it's used to do letterpress printing, because
the proof presses, they're like a table thing, and
wonderful thing. I became absolutely obsessed with letterpress back in the late 90s.
A lot of hipsters are obsessed with aging millennials. Did you see that documentary on letterpress?
No.
It's like all these blue hair people that are into it, and they're gobbling up a lot of like the typeset that was thrown away.
Because of course, when I was dipping into it, it was still like there was a very small presence of kind of neo letterpress printers, but by that point, I mean, a lot of it had been consigned to the rubbish tip, you know, and so you could buy these things for nothing, you know.
You could buy barrels of typeset.
Fonts of type. I mean, a font of type. Like when you buy a font of type, it's basically you say, well, I want Caslon Primer. I want 14-point Caslon Primer, and you'll buy. And so to buy a font of that, it will be a whole set of kind of the proportionate letters and numbers and symbols and ligatures and everything that you need. And so, of course, if you're a commercial concern, you need quite a number of fonts of it. But they were just throwing this away. I mean, extraordinarily. The type, the presses, the galleys, the composing sticks. I mean, everything in this industry was basically scrapped in the 1970s, and so there was a period of time where you could buy it for nothing, and I was very lucky to get in on the ground floor. Now, you're absolutely right, and it's a mixed blessing, because I as much as I hate crafty hipsters, I am very happy that there are so many people who are basically rescuing this beautiful art, which developed in Europe for hundreds of years. I mean, all of the. I mean, by the point where
and in Asia as well, for even
and in Asia as well. I mean, in a different way. But you know, which was just thrown aside. I mean, basically developed to its kind of apotheosis in the middle 20th century, and then with the advent of photo typesetting and certainly digital typesetting, it was just all of it thrown away. No one cared. They threw away not just type, but like the matrices and the punches,
the rollers and everything.
All the documentation for these things, you know. So it is quite extraordinary. And as much as I sort of dislike this kind of crafty hipster,
blue-haired Doc Martens, hipster women.
Boy, watch out! I've got some
Doc
vintage.
Martens?
I've got some vintage Doc Martens. I have a pair of purple and a pair of red Doc Martens that I bought that I bought in like 1989 when I was a young teenager, and I still occasionally wear them because they're still cool.
That's incredible. Yeah. But that's the thing. Like I see that there's some people that are even using 3D printers to print out typeset, which is interesting.
Really? Wow. Yeah. That is very interesting. I mean, it's a whole process, and of course, I mean, there are different. I mean, when you buy type, I mean, there are now companies that produce new type from these old. So the way type is done, when you draw the face, the typeface is generally drawn as big ink drawings.
Yeah.
And then a master punch cutter will take those drawings and he will carve little steel rods. He will carve each letter on the steel rod. And then those are called punches. And so then those will be taken and literally put on top of a piece of brass and punched with a hammer to make a negative impression of the letter form, which will then be used to cast a lead negative positive, which is the thing that's actually set as on the press and printed. So what's very important, like if you certainly have the matrices, like if you want to reproduce a typeface, having the original matrices, I mean, that is gold. And unfortunately, many of them are lost. But
they're lost to hit. Yeah, they're either lost. They got thrown out by people. They type companies that went belly up. In the 70s. Yeah, there's a whole history of them just throwing out stuff and ending up in landfills and
landfills, or source of course being melted down. I mean,
and melted down.
Of course, the fate of any metal. I mean, of course, what happened to Greek sculpture? Well, unfortunately, most of it
peasants melted them down. Yeah,
and it was melted down to make, often to make guns and cannon.
Which is sort of like a vitalist type of thing. That is very Bappy in a way.
Yeah, to melt down a nude male god to make a cannon to kill.
Yeah, that's
all right. I dig it. I can dig it. But
it's terrible. It's terrible, but
it's terrible. But there's a certain poetics to it. And occasionally you get a wonderful spectacle. I mean, another favorite photograph is, I don't know if you know the Riace bronzes, which are two slightly larger than life-size Greek bronze sculptures of male warriors, and they were found. I believe in the early 1970s there was someone who was diving. It was around. I think they're called Riace because that's where they were found, in like just off the coast. And there was a diver who was like, he was doing scuba diving or something, and he saw a human hand like coming out of the sand on the ocean floor. And so he went and reported to the police because he thought it was a mafia body. Like he thought it was a body
in a carpet
that had been dumped. Yeah, the cement shoes. And it turned out, of course, it was these two completely intact, life-size, larger than life-size Greek bronzes, which had just been there, just right on the, just right under the ocean floor for 2,000 years. And so there's a wonderful picture of the excavation of one of these. And so it's basically a fellow, like wearing his swimsuit, standing in the shallow water with his arm around this 2,000-year-old Greek bronze. And it's which they just pulled up. They just pulled out.
That was like one bronze they pulled out of like a cave or something, or they were digging it up, they were excavating it, and there's like all these researchers, or there's these
that's
one.
Yeah, that's a photograph, I think, from the early 20th century. Yeah. And
Yes.
it's this beautiful new male torso, and then there's just all these people. There's like little boys who are employed to like scoop dirt, and there's all these men with notebooks and stuff, and they're all just sat there in front of this cave, and then there's this like
and there's locals helping out. Yeah.
and there's just like this Greek torso shining bright there. It is amazing. What a feeling it must be.
Oh man, to see that to lay eyes on it for the first time in however many thousands of years.
What are they going to pull out? What of ours are they going to pull out?
Plastics, microplastics. They're gonna pull out the Chimera by Sanford Biggers.
Oh no!
They're gonna pull out the Sugar Baby by Carol Walker with her big voluptuous vulva in the back. Yeah, they're gonna find a vulva first.
God. Oh my god! I could tell tales of Carol Walker. Also, because I used to live very near the Domino's sugar factory.
No, really?
Yes. Yeah, because when I lived there, it was still operational, and so of course you would come out certain mornings, and the entire neighborhood would just like reek of treacle and
oh man,
sugar. Yeah,
they say it's sickening after a while. It doesn't smell good. It's like
no, it doesn't smell good after a while. No, absolutely not. And I'm not a big fan of sweets anyway. So
really,
yeah. No.
I thought all British were fans of sweets.
No, not at all. No, I would rather have a sausage. I would rather have a sausage than a chocky. But no, I mean it was still operational when I lived there. And yes, I have a friend who is like BFF with Carol Walker.
Whoa!
And she's perfectly pleasant in person.
Yeah.
But but an absolute.
There's some kind of eclectics thing going on there. There's some kind of eclectics, there's some kind of put the S in front of it,
Yeah. I will say there is something odd about a woman who essentially is some sort of like political cultural critique, spends her life drawing or creating caricatures like of her racial kin.
In a very eroticized manner, yeah.
Exactly, yes. Like absolutely horribly realized. I mean, does she have like nude pickaninnies dancing in her head at night? Like the Sugar Plum Fairy. I mean, it is a bit weird. I mean, it's same with so many of the others. I mean, it's just like, just Kiki Smith dream of a violated female body.
Oh, Kiki Smith, yeah.
You remember her?
Oh my god, that was it's just like I remember. I was reading like a academic paper on her, and I'm like, oh my god, like it's some of her work is quite good, I must say, but some of it is quite a bit too chthonic, if you know what I mean. It's got that. Yeah, I was actually.
Here's my sculpture of Lilith, of the demon spirit of women. No, she literally did a sculpture of Lilith.
Yeah. I was actually in a bookstore with my girlfriend, and I went to the art book section, and I saw a book, but it was too expensive. I didn't buy it. By Kiki Smith. It was like her exhibition that she did around, I want to say 96, 97, 98 of the human body. And I was Oh boy.
I've got it because I as you say, I hate to say, but there are a few of those works, especially kind of the works on paper. I mean, there were the germ of like some really good ideas in those pieces.
Yeah, but then unfortunately it was played out by a lot of other like academic, like zombie formalist people. But that stuff, like a lot, I will say, even though she's probably crazy, a lot of that stuff is brilliant. I remember looking at it and being absorbed by it. And I was explaining this to my GF, and she's like, and we were talking about it, and I remember thinking like, okay, there's obviously, in terms of my, ideological priors, I probably shouldn't be liking this, but there is something quite captivating about the force of that sort of feminine digging way deep into the earth to try to pick something out of it and something outside of their own body. And it's very like, people can read a materialist interpretation to it, but I think it almost in a way it betrays that interpretation. There's something else going on there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and this is a case of course, I think with most art, like art of any merit whatsoever. I mean, this is a lesson that the so-called right-wing chud needs to learn. Is that art, when it has the touch of genius, the touch of transcendence, it is something greater than even the low base intentions of its creator. I mean, it's something that, I mean, you certainly, the classic example is Pablo Picasso, who was, politically an absolute, I mean, this is a man living in a villa near Caen, in the French Mediterranean, going to communist meetings, I mean,
he was slaying Art Ho Strange left and right. He got, he's canceled for that now. According to Nanette, according to what's her stupid name, the comedian, they did a whole like art exhibit with her, like started like doing these like snide like leftoid quips about the artwork of Pablo Picasso. What's her name? Hannah Gadsby. Yeah. They did a whole exhibit. It's called Problematic. Get it?
Oh,
you get it?
Oh, no. Not really.
Go look it up. It's called Problematic.
Oh, that's
problematic. Problematic Picasso. That's the whole point. Yeah, Hannah Gadsby. And even art critics came out. This was a year ago. I actually wrote about it in my book. And even art critics came out and they're like, wow, this is a bit too much because she's saying nothing. She's literally saying nothing.
Stupid.
She's saying, at one point, it was I believe it was one of Picasso's later nudes. Not the famous, the one with the Ladies of the Night. But I remember like...
Well, that's very early. Yeah.
Very early, yeah. But it was one of the
Demoiselle d'Avignon.
Yeah, it was after. It was way after.
Oh, after. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking the Femme d'Alger. You mean the one he did after in the 50s after.
It may have been the Femme d'Alger. Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of them. I mean, towards the end,
there's a lot. Well, he became vulgar kitsch after.
Like really, I mean, minge and asshole and tits. I mean, I kind of like those late mental things that he did.
It's art that even Max Gold could like.
Yeah, exactly. The impotent 90-year-old Spaniard dribbling
the definition his limp of a brush. Dirty old man. Yeah.
I love it. In his mold, stumbling around his moldering villa.
Yeah, with his huge studio, just whisking around his giant pen. Yeah,
like California, and his dutiful final wife, who would end up anhearing herself,
a few
years after his death, because of course the moment she absolutely loved him. The moment he died, a phalanx of lawyers and
grifters and and appraisers people
descended upon it, I mean, and of course she ended up a very rich woman, but still, I mean, it's
that was like Warhol when he died, like all the vultures like swooped in.
Even I mean, his business manager at the time, Fred Hughes, and his attorney literally like broke into his townhouse and put new locks on it. And his brother, one of Warhol's brothers, came up from Pittsburgh, and like the next day to the house, and they wouldn't let him in.
Oh my god!
Yeah, well, because they knew, and they ended up getting nothing. They ended up getting, I think, $500,000, like his brothers, and that estate was worth upwards of $1 billion, back in 1987.
Yeah,
so
yeah. There was like a feasting frenzy.
Oh, it's awful. And it does happen, and it certainly happened with Picasso as well. And now, of course, you've got Marina Picasso, who is his granddaughter, who met him like once. I mean,
he had a number of illegitimate children. Yeah,
he had a number of them, but Marina Picasso is the primary heir to a lot of the estate, including La Californie, which is that villa, which she has been trying to sell for like 200 million euro or something, like some absurd amount of money.
Whoa!
For years. I mean, even Claude Picasso, who recently died. I mean, so anytime you see auctions of Picasso's work, they're often authenticated by either Claude or Paloma. And I mean, it was certainly lucrative for them to have. I mean, Paloma had her own career, but I mean, lucrative for them to have a career as basically kind of the gatekeepers of their father's work, and they knew it. I mean, they grew up with him. They knew him intimately. He did many wonderful works based upon them as children before he threw them out and abandoned them. But but it is quite sad.
In his death, he alpha widowed his wife.
Oh, he was the worst. But I mean, again, back to the point, it doesn't matter.
No.
Again, you can't. It's like music. You've got to disregard, because of course
they're all terrible people. Yeah,
they're terrible people. But if someone isn't, well, most of them, if someone is an artist, they are channeling something that is greater than themselves. It's greater than their puerile temporal politics, and that is what you have to understand. I mean, I find myself like, who is the worst? I'm trying to think of okay. I mean, there's an artist called Robert Gober, who's an American, mostly sculptor, and I really admire his work, even though he is an absolute like act up, gay men's health crisis of the worst sort. Although he's also generally been quite reclusive, so you don't hear too much. But I know his politics. I mean, his politics are obvious, but again, the politics are superfluous to other qualities in the work, and you've just got to learn to kind of understand that those are two separate things. Because if you disliked musicians or artists for their politics, what would you end up listening to? I don't even know. Lee Greenwood.
Kid Rock.
Kid Rock. Ted Nugent and Kid Rock. That's what you get.
I like Ted Nugent and Kid Rock, but maybe not as much Ted Kid Rock, but like Ted Nugent had some bangers.
It's fine. It's fine.
You'd be listening to that Trump rapper. The MAGA rapper. Trap music for Trump. Yeah, that's.
God, no, I don't like it. But,
no, but yeah. So that, how do you spell his name? Gover or Dover?
Robert Gober, Gober. I'll tell you one thing that made it very difficult for me is that in 2008.
Oh, I've seen him before. Yeah.
Oh, you know him. The wax legs sticking out of the wall.
The hair and the cheese. Yeah.
The hair and the sink. The kind of the sinks with flowing water. Really, really technically brilliant. Very, very interesting. I mean, what I like about him is that a lot of his work is kind of, I would say, a kind of unique take on surrealism, where it delves into more a kind of aspect of the cinematic uncanny, and this is also the reason I like Alfred Hitchcock so much, because I think Hitchcock also had this sense. I mean, the menace. I'm trying to remember which of the Hitchcock films. There's a shot. It's funny. It's indicative that I remember the shot more than I remember the story or the name of the film. But there's a shot of someone carrying a poisoned glass of milk on a tray, and it's just this shot of this glass of milk with as much menace as you could put into a picture of a glass of milk. There is something uncanny and horrifying about the way that Hitchcock kind of conceives of the mundane or the American, which I think is present in a lot of Robert Gober's work. It's just
that's like Rear Window.
That's exactly. Yes, exactly. It's the
mundane.
Yeah, the nightmare of the mundane.
And the sinister aspect of sort of the proletarian and the common.
But unfortunately, Robert Gober in the 2000s descended into the depths of what you would call coal. Is that he produced a print as part of a portfolio to raise money for the Obama campaign.
Whoa!
Of like, I think it's like a wonky drawing of like a sunrise, and it says
it's like a bad rendition of a recent Hockney. Yeah, it's like
exactly. It's like it says like hope or something. I mean, it's the same thing. Of course,
it's got like a book or something that's flying in the air, and it's got the it's got the road going into the distance.
You're looking at it.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, this is also the same trap. So, recently deceased artist called Richard Serra.
He died?
Yes, Richard Serra passed away a couple of weeks ago. Yes.
When did he died? Richard Serra. Oh
died
my
couple
God!
Weeks ago. Sorry to be the one.
What? No! Oh my God, he's one of my favorites.
Oh my God, Richard Serra.
Not one of my favorites, but yeah.
I've got a personal anecdote. It is is that I exchanged a couple of harsh words with Richard Serra at an outdoor cafe in the West Village of New York. In about 2004, 2005. So Richard Serra, of course, the kind of the gruff bad boy of minimalism.
Yes.
I mean, very few other artists can put on their resume that they've killed several blue collar workers with their
See, that is kind of like a medieval aristocrat. Yeah.
So after this entire career of this particular type of kind of almost dangerous material minimalism.
Stark, heavy, dangerous minimalism.
He is included in an execrable bi-yearly exhibition called the Whitney Biennale.
Yes, the Whitney Biennale. Yeah, I think I remember this piece in particular. Yeah.
And so his contribution was an oil stick drawing of the Abu Ghraib of the the image of the kind of
the Christ-like figure being crucified.
Yes. A kind of rendition of that on a huge piece of handmade paper on an oil stick, and then the words "Stop Bush."
Oh,
scroll
oh my God!
And I saw it, and I'm just like, this is what it's come to. This is what you've come to. I mean, no fan of George W. Bush myself.
Of course, yeah.
Come on, I'm talking about neoliberal kitsch.
Yeah, that really is like that. That is, but the fact that he had to like lower himself to do that was
exactly. You're Richard Serra. You're not someone. You're not sort of someone part of like a kind of Madison, Wisconsin coffee shop art collective.
You're not Banksy. Yeah.
You're not. I don't think Banksy had been conceived at that point. This was like 2004. Oh God! So that Stop Bush thing. So I remember. Yeah, I mean, this
is like old head Cole right here. Like this is
old. Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, and
this is quartz. This is going way deep. This is.
So I'm sat there at this completely unfashionable like outdoor cafe, near Bleecker Street in the West Village and in Lower Manhattan, with someone. I don't even know why we were there, and the person I was with, who was another kind of art head, said, "Isn't that Richard Serra?" Sitting next to us. I'm like, what? And it was Richard Serra. I recognize him. He was with a very young woman,
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. And so I'm like, oh, well, I mean, okay, Richard Serra. I mean, it's in New York. You know, often, occasionally,
you bump into people.
Yeah, you see people and whatever. I mean, it's not often that you have someone say, "Isn't that Richard Serra?" You know, not the kind of person who's generally easily recognizable, but certainly for miserable people who like subscribe to like art forum. You know,
or Frieza, yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, they're the worst. They truly are. But so what happened? Did you said something to him?
Well, I didn't say anything because I'm not that. You know, I'm not going to.
They're gonna go up and fanboy him.
No, well, the person I was with did.
Oh,
I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Serra. I don't even remember. I mean, again, this was many years ago. I don't remember the gist of the conversation, but I remember that I said something, not about art. I said something because I mean, this was the sort of like height of the global war on terror in New York, and I said something right because I've always been, unlike a lot of people, I didn't make a transition from the left to the right. I've always been a right-wing monster of one sort or the other.
Oh yeah.
So of course it was, you know, it was very interesting being in these places at these times. But I just remember saying something, and Richard Serra like visibly was like visibly upset or you know, like
you were like supporting the goal. You were hitch.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know, I kind of like Donald Rumsfeld, you know. I didn't say that. I didn't say that because I don't. I didn't like any of those fucking neocons, but still, yeah. And I remember
you were hitch slapping him right in public.
Yeah, I hitch slapped him. Well, yeah, watch as John D devastates Richard Serra. No,
owns him with facts and logic, a Moab
with facts and logic. I'm sorry, Richard. That is not an argument. No,
I didn't say that architecture is not artwork. I beg to disagree. I must disagree. Architecture definitely is artwork, and I can prove it. Yeah. Because the Knesset, the architect that designed the Knesset in Israel and Tel Aviv is Ben Shapiro.
I mean, Richard Serra, you're never going to make anything as materially significant as the Wailing Wall.
I'm gonna risk not paying playing wall.
All right.
That's amazing.
Sorry. Well, you know, I mean, you know.
Richard Serra, unless you can build the third temple, I don't really care.
Yeah, it's gonna be the third temple is gonna be just like 4 giant sheets of Corten steel leaning up against each other,
and it has to redact a number of Arab construction workers.
Well, 400 Palestinian iron workers
died making the third temple.
This is the price we have to pay.
Oh my god, that's too much.
But anyway, all I remember about this is that I somehow annoyed Richard Serra, and he just like turned away and stopped talking. I mean, he was very he seemed very ill-tempered. So
yeah.
I mean, to be fair,
he was always ill-tempered.
Well, and also when you're sat there eating, you know, with like, you know, who knows, and you don't want people bothering you.
Yeah, true.
Speaking of macho minimalists, of course, we also fairly recently lost a personal hero of mine, Carl Andre.
That's right.
Whose greatest artwork involved the defenestration of an annoying feminist artist called Anna Mendieta.
No! Oh my god!
Oh
no! I love Anna Mendieta so much.
Oh, of course you do, because of Brazil. Brazil.
Oh, that's terrible. I shall admit though that Carl Andre kind of was really a trailblazer in American. I mean, all this kind of like weirdo, like communist stuff, but it's like I mean, but what
he wore the what do you call them, like his entire life. Yeah, he wore the braces, he wore the overalls for his entire life, in solidarity with the worker.
With the workers.
Yeah. See, for me, I mean, I am much more of a, because the thing about Richard Serra, say what you will about Richard Serra, but he had, I mean, he would haul. I mean, I remember a story about in the 1960s that he found on the streets in New York. He found like a giant pile of discarded industrial rubber, and this was like this was a sort of like a revelation to him, to just find this material, the kind of smell of it and the kind of dirtiness and heaviness of it, and he dragged it back to his studio. Yeah. I mean, and he would he had a studio where he would manipulate these things, and he did those big oil stick drawings with, where he would put on cringe like jazz music, and then like, rub 100 oil sticks into a big piece of paper. And I have much more kind of connection and sympathy, because I'm very physical. I'm very involved in the kind of material of art, the kind of material aspect of its creation. And whereas Carl Andre didn't have a studio, like all of his works, he would order, he would call, and he would say, he
would go to Home Depot, and he needs,
I need 100 zinc plates, deliver them to this location. He just, and I don't like it. I don't like it.
There's something very alienating about it, but I think in a way that isn't like a lot of land artists. There's one Canadian one in particular that, you're doing a lot of ephemeral stuff on location. Of course, photography is the medium, but photography is the expression of the medium, because a lot of these things are advancing.
Yeah.
But
like performance art.
Yeah, like performance art. Yeah. But I think with Carl Andre, it is sort of like a more honest step up of, say, like Jeff Koons, like having the art factory.
I was just going to mention. Another loathsome person. I remember going to a restaurant called Odeon, which was quite popular in the 80s and 90s with art types, and you would often see Jeff Koons there. A disgusting character.
That was like, what was that restaurant in New York? The steakhouse, what was it called? The Jungle Room or something?
Ooh.
It was something, I remember, like, there was a story about Paul Heyman. He tried to like sell the boys on an angle because he claimed that he went to this expensive restaurant, the steakhouse in New York, and he met Jack Nicholson. And Jack Nicholson liked the angle that they were doing. And then RVD is like, wait, Paul, you said that Jack Nicholson likes the angle that you're doing, but you said he doesn't. He goes, guess where I went.
I don't know about that. No, I don't know about that.
Yeah, and he goes, guess where I went? I went to the Jungle Room. And I saw Jack Nicholson, and Jack Nicholson said, I really like that angle between RVD and the Sandman. It's true. And then RVD is like, wait, Paul, I mean, so you're telling me Jack Nicholson saw you, but he liked the angle? Like, but Jeff Koons is I can imagine you going around and like groping Jeff Koons in one of the most fanciest restaurants.
No, I never had any words. I used to see him all the time, but I don't think I ever did I ever speak to him.
Well, add it to your list of groping Richard Serra, then groping.
Well, I'm afraid you missed your chance with Richard Serra. But
oh, I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Jeff Koons is still around.
I would trade a million Jeff Koons for one Richard Serra.
I mean, there's big balloon dogs. I mean, they're sort of technically impressive,
Oh yeah.
Not that he made them, but
the way that they're created though is very meticulous and technically impressive.
Quite amazing, and of course, enormously expensive. The fabrication of all those things is very high.
It's incredible. Well, I was a fan of Richard Serra because I like his method of, like, the drawing to me is almost more interesting, the way that he navigated space, because of course his big thing was that he would draw, like, drawing was not the initial planning iterative process. It was more the blueprints and the mapping that he would work with construction companies. Drawing to him was like a process that came after the fact, that he would take these huge pieces of paper or canvas, he would do a lot of like, various oil crayons and so forth. And he was creating a very like fluid like dynamic that would accompany the structure. And I thought that was like very interesting how he reversed that tradition of drawing. And I was always fascinated by it. I remember like binging a lot of these art documentaries and of course his Charlie Rose interviews and like all that. Is Charlie Rose, didn't he get canceled? Is he still alive or?
I think he was. No, he's still alive, but I do think he was cancelled. Well, I mean, he's white, you can't be on American public television,
and asking your secretaries for a booyah, that's not.
Whoa!
Yeah, that's not gonna happen. So I was getting a booyah and they're sucking me up. That was a Sam Hyde bit from the one of his stand-ups. Yeah, booyah. It was called Boyshed and Paul. My Sammy and he, my cousin, I am his cousin, Boyshed and Paul. Because it was very funny. Yeah, but so I forgot about Picasso. The Hannah Gadsby problematic thing. There was a point where it was one of his later female nudes, and the comment on the tape while you're enjoying Picasso, but you're listening to Hannah Gadsby, so it doesn't make any sense, is that she's like just one little quip about, can you imagine being a worker that had to be subjected to this or something like that? It was like one of these, like really, it was a comment on like Picasso being flaccid or whatever. And like that was like the level of art world commentary. And I think like the whole bit of like Hannah Gadsby being like a pretend art critic because she took a few courses of art history in school.
Yeah.
That bit sort of like wore thin. And there was like a weird moment when that happened where it kind of was like the art world trying to put the woke away, but not really, of course. It was like pretending to put the woke away by criticizing Hannah Gadsby's Picasso hit piece. So it was like
awful. And of course, by that time, Picasso, he wouldn't have been hiring work. All of that was it was all fantasy, or it was his wife Jacqueline, at that moment. But he was sort of beyond the sort of, I don't know. Do you remember all this biz like try to stop people from looking at Claude Monet's portrait of his wife dressed as a Japanese woman?
They said it was cultural appropriation. Or they tried to like get rid of William Waterhouse in galleries, because it was sister, whatever.
Because it was because of all the pert nipples or something. God.
It was white women too. You can't have that.
Well, of course it's white. Of course it's white women.
Yeah,
fat white women as well.
It
reminds me, another thing about Picasso is that Picasso, because of his status, has a lot of terrible books and biographies written of him, and one of the worst was written by a woman who was very little known at the time, but became well known for a different reason, and her name was Ariana Stasinopoulos Huffington.
Wow!
I.e., the woman who's the namesake of the Huffington Post. So back in, I believe, in the late 80s, she wrote a biography of Picasso called Picasso, Creator and Destroyer. And it is one of the worst artist biographies, that I've ever had the displeasure of trying to read. People remember that Ariana Huffington's story because she married a rich man who turned out to be a homo.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that marriage didn't work out. But of course, she received a giant slab of money, which allowed her to, and I don't know what point she went from being a kind of artist biographer to being the Huffington Post. But
she used to go on, what was it, John McLaughlin or whatever. She used to like go on these panels where she would like debate. I think it was Pat Buchanan or somewhere. I forget.
Yeah, well, she was also back then. She was a sort of so-called conservative. She used to be in kind of quote conservative spaces, and but
then she like libified and she created like one of the worst vectors of like the excesses of like
not even the Victorian engineers who created the London sewer ever built as efficient a pump as the Huffington Post.
As Huffington Post, yeah.
God.
Yeah. Oh my God!
I
Yeah.
suppose it's still around. I suppose it's still around in some form.
Oh yeah, they still have they still write hit pieces on people.
Yeah.
And they still do their thing. But of course, like it's like all these like 2010s media hot pot sites, they're sort of like visibly underfunded and nobody cares anymore. And it's like BuzzFeed resorting to writing listicles again type of thing. It's over, man. It's over.
It's absolutely over. Oh.
But I wanted to maybe this could be the paywalled version, but maybe we'll get more in depth on Andy Warhol. But I wanted to I don't know if I should even ask this, but I know you don't like talking about this, but the whole debate on women in quote unquote distant right spaces, you had a lot of, not to mention, because again I'm good friends with one of these women, so that was involved, but your critique of various demographics that are setting the narrative on the quote unquote dissident right. I mean, I think maybe we could disagree a little bit, but your point, you and Distributist were actually going back and forth on this. I think that's like a spicy incentive for people to we'll get more into the artsburgery later, but it is kind of getting a little bit late, but
it is. Gio, you probably often interview younger people with more flexible bladders, but I've just got to take a moment.
No problem.
To have a slash. Can we just pause for a moment? Hello. I
sound like a racehorse pissing in there.
Oi! I know it's muted.
I'm kidding. I do that oh my God! I even said this today on the show. I do that stupid Sopranos joke all the time, where Vito is like Vito's trying to get Finn to not Meadows' boyfriend at the time to not like spill the beans that he's gay, and he's he goes up to me, he's like, "You sound like a racehorse pissing in there," after he's in the porta potty. Oh my God!
God's sake! I even though I quite like The Sopranos, but I didn't remember the reference.
Yeah.
No, well, I
do that stupid joke to every guest that takes a break. It's just
all right.
Yeah, it's all right. Oh my God!
I remember once watching something with. It was something like a new. I think it was hosted by the New York Times, like where, Penn and Teller, the magician, right?
Yes.
And the cringe new atheist skeptics, I like them as musicians, not magicians, but the skeptic thing is so awful, Here we are with our good friend Lawrence Krauss and James Randi at the Amazing Meeting, Okay.
Yeah, and what's his Steven Pinker, our good friend.
And Steven Pinker. And I wonder, did Penn Jillette ever go to a certain island? But anyway, I remember they were doing this thing at the New York Times.
I've been told I look like, and I have the affectations of Penn Jillette.
I mean, you don't look like him so much, but you.
Well, I used to have a ponytail, so that's why.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you have the broad personality, perhaps. You're much nicer than. I mean, he is an absolute arsehole. I actually met Penn and Teller a long time ago.
Really?
Oh, yes, man. I went to one of their shows in the 90s because I like magic. Another weird aspect of my scrambled characters. I'm a big fan of magic and conjuration, all that. Both real and otherwise. No, and so I mean, say what you will about Penn Jillette being kind of an arsehole, but they apparently quite frequently they'll just come out either outside the theater or in the lobby or whatever after the performance and just like hang around and talk to people. And they did. Yeah, they were quite cool. And of course, I was at the time surprised that Teller actually speaks and quite eloquently. But anyway, I remember this thing where Penn and Teller were at the New York Times, and Teller was doing a famous routine that he does called the needle trick.
Oh, I think I've seen this.
Yeah, it's really it's quite good. It's quite good. It's kind of classic routine of theirs. And meanwhile, whilst Teller was doing this, Penn went to the loo. Except Penn forgot that he had a hot mic on his lapel when he went to the loo. Anyway, there we go. But I drank 2 liters of this alkaline water with dinner, hence why I had to take a break.
Yeah.
See, I'm a right-wing health faddist as well. I'm drinking my volcanic. Like it's from Mauna Loa. It's from a volcano. Well, how you get water from a volcano, I don't know. But
the charcoal of the volcano filters it. Apparently, that's the selling point. Yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, it's
it's got negative pH. But,
yeah, it's why in fact I tested it. I put I put a pH strip in it, and it was about 9 pH 9. So quite alkaline. I mean, you wouldn't want to drink anything much stronger than that. But to be fair, it tastes like water with a pinch of bicarbonate soda added to it. So I may just do that in the future.
Yeah, they say that like a lot of mineral waters, you have to be careful though, because then if it's stripping out a lot of nutrients that, for example, that your heart needs, like you can't live off of purified water, or else there's a lot of
you certainly don't want to drink. Yeah, you don't want to drink distilled water. No,
distilled
you
water.
You want water with with lots of with lots of dissolved solids and salts and things in it, and it tastes better too. Distilled water does not taste that good.
It literally tastes like nothing. Anyways,
my volcanic water, which I'm now going to pour a bit into this bourbon. See what happens.
There we go.
It's burst into flames. No, it hasn't. All right, so we were talking about women, right?
Oh yeah. But first, before that, do you think that the art world's going to put the woke away, or is that's impossible?
I don't even. Because
what does that even mean?
Like, what does that even mean? I mean, first of all, the art world has been quote unquote woke for much longer than kind of the general
everything else
public would be conscious of, in a way. Although I mean, it depends. I mean, I don't know, because I certainly remember the art world when the market was quite different. My entree into the commercial art market was in the 90s, and it was a very different vibe. It was a very different vibe. In fact, there was a lot of kind of. So people in Britain may remember that there was a period in the late 90s, early 2000s, where there were like tons of what they call lads magazines, and like there was just this like the lad politically incorrect, show us your tits, love, like that became like that was like the coin of the realm. And you had like women doing. I mean, AA is all.
There was ladettes that had.
The ladettes, exactly. I mean, drinking, going and drinking pints, and so
going to council flat parties.
Yeah, there was a weird period where it was almost like a sign of prestige to be the most loathsome male pig that you could possibly.
It was like hipster before hipster too.
Yeah, low and very low class. This was all, again, it was all kind of like proto chav working class, culture.
Yeah,
writ large, and I mean, I find it distasteful then. And now, of course, I mean, it's got swung so much in the opposite that occasionally a bit of male, it's like why I like Red Hawk. A male piggery is actually preferable to sanctum, the kind of secular sanctimony. So I don't know the art world recently has been infested with the worst. I mean, the absolute worst, and I mean, even on a high market level. So I mean, they are basically artificially pushing a lot of these absolute coal artists. I could name, because I had personal contact with some of these people way back when who are now big figures, but I can't say. Perhaps when we stop recording, I will tell you. But yes, but and so even if you look at like Christie's, for instance, big auction house. If you look at their fine art auctions, especially the temporary art, I mean, they're just scads of people that I've never even heard of, who were born in like 1998, who are doing like trying to remember a good example of one of these terrible artists. Do you remember the horrible portrait of Michelle Obama that was done as the official...
I have a whole... Yeah, I talk...
Can't remember her.
Kenda Wiley?
No, that was the man. And I shall
say
no,
but he
more.
did one of
Wiley,
Michelle too.
No, he did Barack Obama, but
he did a Michelle with Obama, but people only remember the Obama one. But I know the one you're talking about.
The official White House portrait was done by a female artist, and it's blue. It's got a
I know. Oh my
kind of
God,
sickly robin's egg blue. It looks like a high school student, sort of, like it's obviously done from a photograph. Like it just has those characteristics.
There was the Kenda Wiley one, but then there was this is from the Obama Foundation. Part of White House history reveals the blah 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 blah. Joe Biden, Dr.
Amy Sherrill.
Oh yeah, Amy Sherrill. Yeah.
It's so bad. It's so.
It's terrible. It's like I noticed. Like I call it like contemporary, like contemporary like leftist realism, where it's like it's new figuration. They're bringing back the figure, but it's always that like plasticky, ultra smooth type of like illustrative form of figuration.
Yeah, because these are people who never really learned how to. I mean, you can learn how to use photographs as a reference source.
Oh yeah, but you edit them in such a way as the light and dark.
Yeah, but these I mean, or you make it, or you do something like Gerhard Richter or Chuck Close, where you make the fact that it is based upon a photograph part of the aesthetics. But this is just like it just looks bad. It just looks like these paintings are so awful. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to do. Do you know Alex Katz?
Yes. Yeah.
Kind of almost deliberate, naive kind of figuration.
It strays between like pop art and folk art. Yeah. Alex Katz. Yeah.
But I mean, it's a very deliberate aesthetic, and it's almost like these people are trying to do like black Alex. But it doesn't work at all. It just like Hockney's. That you remember when Hockney did that series where he just did like hundreds of portraits of his friends that they all had a very similar blue background.
He did them on iPads. Yeah.
No. These were big oil portraits, but he just did them.
Oh yeah.
Did them in a sort of giant warehouse studio, and he just did them like every day over the course of like a year. He just had groups of people or singular people come in, and they all have a similar kind of blue background, or most of them do. They're very interesting series, like sort of this massification of the hand painted portrait. But again, this is nothing that any of these people become close to.
There's one by Amy Sherrill, where it's a more rotund black woman dressed up as Alex from A Clockwork Orange.
Oh, no.
It's fascinating. Oh. It's quite fascinating.
Oh.
And she's got the codpiece. And God. With blonde hair.
She's got the short. I've never seen it before.
The short afro and blonde hair.
And the problem glasses. Like she's bearing her midriff, even though she looks to be about 45. Oh.
Yeah, Amy Sherrill, she looks like every, I forget who was it. Kofifian? No, I think it was Facebook that said this is the dismantler physiognomy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like when you see a kind of light-skinned black woman with that either the afro or kind of like that kinky wild hair, you just exactly you know that they're here to to take you apart.
They have the huge like cat lady 1950s glasses. It's like the affectation of it. Yeah. Oh my god.
And then like y'all folks with an X, of course. Y'all folks.
I'm doing a dramatic tone poem on what's her name, the Supreme Court woman, Ketanji Jackson.
Oh.
I'm doing a tone poem on Ketanji Jackson. And it's y'all folks don't know that this intersectional oppression is really it's got that that was like that woman who did Carol. It's funny that Carol Walker.
It's like Carol Walker, and I mean Carol Walker
is quaint compared to these people.
Yeah, I mean Carol Walker is like of a different generation, but yeah. Carol Walker is very nice in person, but you know.
Yeah. I mean, just let her cook. You know, like just let her have this thing about white men, and
it's fine. You know, if you want to have all right. Anyway,
tactics of it. And speaking of women, so
right.
the art world, we didn't answer the question. The art world can never putting the woke away in the art world is a nonsensical type of notion.
It's just superfluous. It's almost a superfluous question.
Yeah,
and of course there are. I mean, as I tend to always mention when talking about the art world, is that there are many art worlds. You know, there are many kind of
yes.
It's you know, it's a thousand plateau. You know, it's a distributed system, and of course there are art worlds upon art world. You know, it's like the many worlds theory. You know, and many of these dimensions never overlap. I mean, there is a whole world of people who paint like sort of neo-Georgian trophy pictures of horses and cows, like George Stubbs, except like there are people doing it now, and there's a whole world of these people. And you're never going to hear about them anywhere. But I mean, they command very high prices. They are very highly regarded amongst certain types of aspirational aristocrat types. You know, I mean,
that's a good grift. Actually, I should get
exactly. I mean, if you're content with doing that and you can do it, why not? I mean, and there are people who still do like sort of like latter day bad John Singer Sargent oil portraits of people.
They're on TikTok and YouTube. They go to ateliers, like that Cesar Santos guy.
And I mean, I've met some people very, very high levels in this world. You know, I mean, people who you would never have heard of. No one in the kind of multinational, global kind of contemporary art market. World. They're not going to know. They're not going to know any of these people. You know, but
then how do they exist though? Like, do they have an ecosystem in which rich people?
They have their own ecosystem. They have their own galleries. That have their own galleries. They have their own. You know, these are also. I mean, they tend to be people who also. I mean, they will go to the Derby. You know, they will go to Glyndebourne. They will go to all these things and hang out with their potential clientele. The kind of fag ends of the kind of what passes for the British aristocracy.
Yeah.
And you know, and they schmooze and they make their connections.
Oh, you bought this Arabian horse, maybe I can paint it.
Yeah, exactly. You know.
Yeah.
And so it is odd.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mr. D.
Well, I was just going to say it is odd, but another weird one is that there's a whole ecosystem of artists who paint like softcore gay erotica.
Yes.
But like tasteful gay erotica, like for you know, cringe clientele all over the world. You know, I mean,
it's a step above furry artists or like
it's a step above furry artists, because I mean, these are people making tens of thousands of dollars for pictures because they sell them to Israelis and Arabs who are huge collectors of this. You would not believe it. unbelievable.
Is there like some documentary article or source material that exposes that, or is it just
not that I know of? And the way I sort of know about this is I knew someone who again around the same age as me, same milieu, in actually this person I met in New York in the 1990s who was at that time aspiring to be a kind of, a quote serious gallery fine artist, of the kind of, again, the kind of art forum class, that you're shooting for the Whitney Biennale. And they sort of gave up at a certain point because they discovered that they could make instead of trying to make like quote serious art, with like postmodern commentary about the male gaze and
race and gender and
eroticism and queer queerness. I mean, back before this was all back before anyone in kind of normal circles would ever have heard of these things. But they kind of it didn't really work out, but they discovered that they were good enough painters of kind of men, male figure paintings.
Oh man.
They could kind of like give it sort of certain edgy touches, and they could sell these things through certain galleries who deal in this sort of schlock.
Yeah.
And you would get these like Saudis, they would happily pay $50,000 for one of these pictures. So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
In a different world, maybe I would have done, but I'm too honest, I can't.
You wouldn't have done that. That just seems.
No, I couldn't. I could have done it. In fact, I remember, there was a period of time when I was doing my sort of my misstep into my misstep into the idea of being an academician as well as an artist, which did not work out at all. And I spent a lot of time and a lot of money getting degrees that mean absolutely nothing to me now. But there was a point in time so this is when I was doing cooking. So of course people know that I'm very interested in food and cookery, but I was actually doing catering as a way to kind of, support myself at this time. And so also during that time, someone introduced me and they said, look, you can do it under a pseudonym. The person that introduced me this, they said, I do it under a pseudonym. And it was basically making art for corporate clients to decorate offices,
I could do that. Yeah, that's pretty.
Exactly. And it's just like, and I did it for a while. Well, so again, people who are familiar with sort of history of contemporary art will know that both Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg, in the very early struggling days in the 1950s, they did window displays for various department
That's right. Yeah.
In New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they under the name Matson Jones, like they both used the same pseudonym. And of course that was a big difference between Johns and Rauschenberg and Warhol, because Warhol also did window displays, but he used his own name because he was perfectly proud of it, Oh, it's great. Oh, gee, it's great. Oh, I've drawn shoes for 10 years. I can
Thank you for listening to the Content Minded podcast, where every Wednesday there are interesting guests, amazing ideas, solo streams, and discussions on a diverse array of topics from art, philosophy, history, and more. The free version will be available both here on YouTube and as a downloadable link on Anchor and Spotify, as well as on Substack. Each week, the full, uncensored, and spicier version will now be available on both Patreon and Substack, where you will have access to the full archive of both Content Minded and of Giant Reviews, where I break down interesting texts every week, including other exciting paywalled articles and good content. Thank you all. Please like, share, and subscribe. God bless. Goodbye. Help keep the content renaissance alive. Too sweet.